that works better because now you can actually do something.
Yeah, last time I wasn't doing anything. Is that a big one?
That is a bigger one, but it's not as big as the first one.
Yep, it's a little bigger.
Great.
Yellow. 2 stickers.
That's the reason you're wearing gloves.
Ooh, tried that one without hitting it.
Another tap, but this one's perfect.
Yeah, this one's gonna break apart.
Yeah, good. Oh, yeah.
That one came out right away. This one could?
A little bit.
This one gonna come out easy?
Yep. Now the tap. Hi.
I did roll the way.
Your tape instead of the nut?
That went with one big hit.
Oh, that sounds good. Look at that.
This one has none. Look at what I'm doing with my teeth.
And that one's got
Look
lots.
at what I'm doing with my
Extend a
teeth.
little bit more.
Yeah.
Oh, you're scooping it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't touch more hits.
Don't forget that one.
Hi, Mom. That you're going to be wearing?
I have actually grandma's shoes and my jacket,
So you could go.
a dress. I do have my earrings, so I guess I'm ready.
Covers you up more than some of those dresses that you were showing last night.
What?
What dress covers you up more than those dresses you were showing last night?
Yeah. Let's see, you're just whittling away too.
Whoops, I haven't done anything for 10 days. I better do something.
Only thing I did.
Good afternoon, friends. We're gathered here in the protective shelter of God's healing love. We are free to pour out our grief, release our anger, face our emptiness, and know that God cares. As we gather here, we are conscious of others who have died and of the frailty of our own existence on this earth. We come to comfort and support one another in a common loss. We want, and our song leader is Frank Pearsall. And those of you who go to Rotary know Frank from conducting the music there. And he will begin then with our song service. And you're encouraged to sing parts, bass, tenor, alto. Okay, let's go. Hymn sing. Stand if you are able.
People, and maybe you do too, who are 35, 40, and 45, maybe even 50 years old, who have less spunk and vitality than the Nora Copeland I knew. So I'm not going to try to outline her life. She did that. Many of you helped her do that. You have small snippets of it. What I'm going to try to tell you is a few thoughts that come to mind when I think about my other mother, Nora Copeland. I think my first memory goes back to about the time, I can't put a date on it, I can come close. It was about the same time I fell in love with Mrs. Copeland's daughter, I think. We don't have time to explore how I think I was put to the test, by the way. But I do have time for a little story, maybe a couple, and we'll make them short. The first time I think I flunked the test was early on when I got to know the Copeland family. They invited me to join them on a family outing, and the outing was to their 40-acre plot of ground known as the West Fork. It was up on the West Fork of the Cedar River up in northeast Iowa. In order to get to this tract of land, you had to go down a farm lane. My brother remembers a certain trip during the farm lane in the winter time. We won't go there. Almost broke his back in the winter. But they had not so fancy gates on this farm lane, and the gates amounted to, they called it a gate, it was a stick with a bunch of barbed wire hooked to it, and it was down in a hook, something. Well, I was riding along in the car for the first time trip to the West Fork, and well, let me tell you who was in the car. There was the Copeland family. That's, to me, Mr. and Mrs. Copeland. There was their son, Judson. There was Nora Copeland's mother, Mrs. Cayley, and then there was Mrs. Copeland's daughter. I go to great lengths to tell you who was there because any one of these folks knew how to open a farm gate. They'd opened farm gates many, many times, but here I was, the city slicker, the new guy. So Mrs. Copeland said, "Let's let our guest do it." So I hopped out, city boy that I was, went up to the gate thinking, I'm 18 years old, this gate's not going to get the best of me. I had never seen a gate like this. Need some help? She said. No, I'm fine. I struggled with the gate. It was taut, very taut. I got that top piece of barbed wire off, or it was a cord or wire or something. And then I pulled it out. I got it. They were behind me in the car. So I took the gate, anxious to now open it up, and I backed up with the gate and waved them on through with a smile on my face. And they kind of like this, and they pulled through, and they stopped. That was nice. And then quickly, not wanting to hold them up, I took the gate, walked back up there real quick because it was real wobbly. I put the base in, and then I got the top rung over the gate. Not everybody laughing. Oh, what's so funny? I was on the wrong side of the gate. That was far from my only lesson, courtesy of the Copeland family. I know how very proud Nora has always been of her daughter's handwriting. Many of you in this room will testify to that. I think it was called the Palmer method. She taught, you've heard that probably, and she taught handwriting to everybody. I remember sending her daughter a card. I don't remember the occasion. It may have been a birthday, maybe been the anniversary of our first date, which, by the way, was March the 13th, Friday. But whatever it was, she got the note and referred to it in our next occasion to meet. And ever since that time, I have printed everything that I write down. I look back now and recognize that it was her zest for life that kept her young, even at 85 and 90, and even up to just shortly before her health started to fail. It was very hard to slow her down. Many years ago, when walking became difficult, I don't think she ever liked the idea of a cane, but she went for two. And you could recognize Nora wherever she went because she used two canes. That was a trademark, actually, down at the senior center. Those of you who remember seeing her there. Where could we find Nora? Look for the two canes. That evolved into a wheelchair. Recently, when she moved to assisted living, she moved out of her apartment upstairs here on 4 and moved down to 2 over here in assisted living. And she went for a scooter, an electric scooter. I can tell you, the first time she took a high-speed U-turn in the open hallway, there were a lot of people holding their breaths, including Mrs. Copeland's daughter. We were watching her. Some of you know Nora Copeland was a teacher. She taught at a one-room schoolhouse, and then she moved to the multi-grade variety. I think the stories I remember from her in that one-room schoolhouse are more vivid to me because I really think she liked that challenge. She never stopped learning. She never stopped teaching. How did that work? Roy, she said, she used to call me Bud or Roy. Heard from Senator Grassley lately? Senator Grassley was a good friend of hers. Or tell me about your day. She was always asking questions. She was always looking up things. After she died, when we went over to her apartment, I remember the dictionary was sitting on the chair. I don't remember what age she was, but when her son Randy got a motorcycle, Nora Copeland wanted to be his first passenger. And she had to be well into her 60s, 70s. I just remember her hanging onto the rear seat. I think we have a picture of that, as a matter of fact, over here. Show that picture, by the way, to her friends, and they'll say, it doesn't surprise me a bit. Nora Copeland has left us in the physical form, but she has left us gifts. She's left us the gift of those memories that we have right now, of the stories we'll be telling for a long time to come, and frankly, the lessons she is still teaching. And frankly, as I stand here this very moment, I can acknowledge to you, in my humble opinion, she left her best gift of all, Mrs. Copeland's daughter.
I didn't come here prepared to say anything, but I must. She was more or less like a sister to me. However, she actually is my mother's cousin, but they were very close people. But she took charge. Nora got her folks. We lived in Illinois, and her folks would come by in the summertime on the way to Pennsylvania, and she would be like a 12-year-old girl, but she told her dad, we're going out to Pennsylvania, we're going to stop and see the Phillipses, and sure enough, here she comes. But she always did that, and it was just great. We would visit them on the farm when she was growing up, and we had a wonderful time with Uncle Will and Aunt Nell, her parents. But anyway, Nora was just precious to all of us, and I do. She's a little older than I am. I'm no kid, as you can see. But anyway, to me, she was much closer than actually our relationship would seem. but we just loved her so much, and I think this is a wonderful service in memory of Nora because she loved to sing. And I just found somebody a little bit ago, we were out to visit her one time many years ago, and she said, well, let's go and visit such and such church on Sunday morning. So we get into the church and opened the door, and it was just about ready to start, and she looked around. She says, oh, I got the soloist, I don't want to go here, I want to go where there's a choir. So out we go down the street to another church. And that's the way she was. She did love to sing, and she just was so alive all the time. Everything was going great, and I had some other thing I was going to, well, I was to her wedding. Of course, your daughter can't remember that, but anyway, it was a really rainy day. She was married in the Baptist Church in New Hartford, got herself ready in the parsonage, which was next door, but she ran across the lawn with a newspaper over her head trying to keep dry. But it was a beautiful wedding. I had been married to my lovely wife a year before in Freeport at 9 in the morning, and guess who was there at 9 in the morning? She was there at Freeport, Illinois. That's about 200 miles away. But we were that close, and we really loved Nora and her whole family. Thank you.
I'm Pat Heidenringham, and I'm the executive director at Oak Knoll. And the reason I say that is because every time I saw Mrs. Copeland, she always said what a wonderful job I was doing as director. And that was important to me, and that was great to hear. But the other thing is, you know, she had such a twinkle in her eye and a contagious smile, and she enjoyed and loved every day of her 95 years. And for those of us that do so much and run around and think that there's no time for anything, she was one that whether it was a robin singing on her windowsill or some event that she was looking forward to, every day was a wonderful day and a day to embrace and to enjoy. And she did that every day.
I'm not very good at extemporaneous speaking. I didn't realize this opportunity would be made, but I really should say a few things. I'm Dennis Reese, and I grew up next door to Rita and to Nora and Dale and Judson. And I guess maybe I can just fill in for Judson. And he obviously is not here, and he was my best friend growing up, and so tragically died in 1968. But he was basically my only friend, to be frank, for all those years, even though he was 3 or 4 years older. But we were together all the time, and the thing about Nora was that I'm neighbor, I guess you could say, and I still think of myself as a neighbor. But neighbors back in those days were different somehow. It was a case, and my dad is here, Glenn, and I know he'll agree with me, and my late mother would certainly agree that it was a sort of relationship that you could just walk over next door in Cedar Falls anytime you wanted, and Judson or Nora, Rita could come over next door to our place anytime. We never locked our doors, and if I wanted to eat with Nora, I'd eat with Nora. And Judson would come over and stay at our place for 2 or 3 days. And her cat, Kitty, would come over and jump up on my bed and hang around. It was just, those were great.
Allergic to the cat.
I was allergic to the cat. I love the cat dearly, but anyway, she eventually would go back. But those were great and wonderful days, and I miss those days so much. And when I go back to Cedar Falls, I always think of it as Nora's house next door, and I always will, and it's much the same as it was. Judson and I did everything together. The time we built walkie-talkies, I remember. Judson was better at science and math than I was, but I would camp out in his room. We built our walkie-talkies, and then we would talk to each other back and forth late at night when we were in bed. That was kind of cool. Nora was one of the few people who encouraged me to take Latin. And I just remember when I was in high school, she would, you got to keep going with Latin. It's very important because it's the basis of our English language, and it's going to improve your vocabulary. And of course, she was right, and I did even took Latin at the University of Minnesota. But I could talk to Nora. She was so much older, but she was so young in spirit, and you could talk to her about anything. And I'll miss her terribly, and I really will. So it won't be the same world without her.
There for me, I was there for her. And when she got to where she couldn't do things, she'd say, "Can you help me with this?" And especially with her flowers. Flowers were her big thing. She just had to have flowers. And in the summertime, she took the screen off the window and had a big, long flower box on her air conditioner outside the window. She had rocks in the bottom to keep the wind from blowing it away. Sometimes the wind was pretty hard on it anyhow. But flowers is one thing that was her hallmark. And another thing was her earrings. She wasn't dressed until she had her earrings on, and they were always good-sized earrings. But they always coordinated. And after she moved down to assisted living, she got to where she couldn't water her plants. So several times I'd go in and water her plants, take the dead leaves off, and so forth and so on. She says, "You don't know how I appreciate this." She says, "I love you for it." That was Nora.
I don't want to do it. Tried to rehearse it in my mind. I don't think any of us want to do it, but I will, because she pushed.
Yeah,
She would have told me to, right?
She told you to.
Yeah. Well, that's the spirit of what I want to say, is that as a teacher, I don't think I would have wanted to be your student. But as her grandson, I was. And I laugh. I hope you see that, because there are some lessons we didn't learn too well. Public speaking, I didn't pick up from the rest of the family, but whether it was identifying birds or didn't figure that out either, or figuring out how to crack a walnut to get the whole thing out. Actually, those were hickory nuts, not walnuts. So you learned the difference there. Couldn't tell you the difference between one tree or the other, but did learn some of that. Or read a map, or look things up in the encyclopedia. But she would have pushed me to do it. So I did it.
And I heard Hugh Phillips get up there and visit. I thought, oh, there's Hugh. Get him today. But Nora and I were first cousins, and we were very good friends. Not just cousins, but friends. And we always discussed things. Her daughter, Rita, was in Cedar Falls High School about the time, well, I'm not sure my oldest son, maybe he was there. My only son, I should say. But we had lots in common. We always enjoyed our music, and she always kept in contact with me. When she lived, after she lost her husband, she's out on the Grand Boulevard, she'd call me and say, "Well, I just called you, Neva, to see where your kids are and what they're doing. And where's Gary, and how's he getting along with his cello?" And of course, now he's moved on to many other instruments. But just to say that she and I had a real good friendship and enjoyed each other a lot. And this is an opportunity for me today to get to see some of these people that I haven't seen for a long time. Thank you, Nora. Oh, one more thing. He mentioned rain. I was bridesmaid at Nora's wedding. And she had said to me before, she said, "Neva, I think it would be, I have thought about a garden wedding. But I think maybe we'll just be in the church." But she said, you know, if we had a garden wedding, we could have lovely garden hats. And I said, you know, Nora, that would be beautiful, but I just can't afford it. I'm in college, and I just don't have the money for a garden hat. She said, we'll have it in the Baptist church.
Work here for the assisted living. And my first experience with Nora was 5 years ago when I started working at Oak Knoll. My third day of work, Wednesday, they told me in the afternoon that I have to go to the fourth floor and bring a lady by the name of Nora Copeland for her whirlpool. So I took a wheelchair, I went up fourth floor, I knocked on the door. She said, come in. I went inside and I looked around. It was a wall-to-wall of birthday cards. She told me I have to come in and look at the cards before I can take her for her whirlpool. She was very proud of the banner her family had made for her birthday. I told her I only have a half an hour. I can take you for your whirlpool, I can bring you back, and every time I'm here to take you down for your whirlpool, I'll promise to read 5 cards at a time, and she agreed to it. In March, when she first moved to the assisted living, I got to know her better because I was there with her every day. She was a very fine lady. She was a very fighter. If something she wanted to get done, it has to be done now. There is no later or whatever. I brought a poem I was going to read, but I think I'm going to choke, so I'm going to ask Nancy to read it for me. This is a poem I read on my mother's memorial, so it fits fine.
If tears could build a stairway, no farewell words were spoken, no time to say goodbye. You were gone before we knew it, and God, only God knows why. Our hearts still ache in sadness, and secret tears will flow. What it meant to lose you, no one can ever know. But now we know you want us to mourn for you no more, to remember all the happy times life still has in store. Since you'll never be forgotten, we pledge to you today a hallowed place within our hearts. That's where you'll always stay. Thank you, Asha. That's lovely.
That's a lovely Indian poem with a southern accent.
We are in and all of its creatures, all of God's creatures. This is a tribute to my mom, the ever-educator, and to my late brother Judson, and to my daddy. Rita said, today as I was consumed and engulfed by my grief and loss and crying for my mommy, our Persian cat, Vashti, who was given to me by my children for Mother's Day 10 years ago, came to lie beside me. She was there to comfort me. And when she heard me sob, Mommy, she turned her head and looked at me. Through this cat, I was given consolation and comfort and a sense of peace. 14 years ago, our Cocker Spaniel dog, Taffy, was another example of understanding, as Taffy sat at my feet and followed me when I returned from the hospital after cancer surgery. God's animals have an understanding of death, loss, and sadness, and do their part in their own way to share the message of God's ongoing plan for his entire kingdom. Rita says, Mom loved all of nature as evidenced by her love for this cat, her love of flowers and all growing things that was taught to her by her parents. As farmers, they taught her the lessons of life and death, of planting and reaping, the lessons of God's ongoing universe, his plan. In the past month, one of Mom's concerns was that she didn't want to leave me. This had been her role for 59 years, my mother, my caretaker. During her last days, I tried to reassure her over and over again that I'd be okay, that it was time for her to visit Judson and Daddy and Grandma Kaylee. It was time to be free of the pains and infirmities. It was time to be able to walk straight and upright again, free of the canes, the walker, wheelchair, and the electric scooter. Mom, the lifelong student and educator, is still teaching me the lessons of God's universe and of His supreme plan. She is assuring me she will continue to do so throughout the remainder of my life and the generations to follow. Thank you, Rita. That's beautiful. That I wonder if there's even any question that I need to ask when I wrote, what is the measure of a woman? You have your own opinions of who this woman was. You have your own significant measurements to decide what she was in your life. She was organized. She was honorable. She was a stabilizing influence with routines and lessons that everybody is still learning, as I understand it. A woman who taught by example, provided support for her family. She made it happen. How do we measure a woman's life? Accomplishing what you set out to do is one very good way. How do we measure a woman's life? Her children and grandchildren and dearest friends, most important to her. Let's remember that the measure of a woman is the fullness of her life. We mourn and grieve our genuine loss of a loved one, but we would not bring her back to suffering and pain. We've all been telling you about a woman who lived life to the fullest. How did it happen? Where did it come from? I'm a Quaker, Southern Baptist Quaker, but we'll talk about that later. I'm convinced that how this happened came from that of God in her, that place inside each person that has no name. It's where God lives. It's where peace comes from. It's where creativity is born. It's where love originates. It's where commitment lives. And until we learn and discern that part of ourselves, we will be incomplete. All woman is not what these last few weeks have been. The totality of her being is the fullness of her life. If we forget this, then we forget her. We must remember her when she was in the best of health, when she had hopes and dreams and plans for the future. We must see her again in a time of vigor, health, and honest hard work. Nora Copeland, a woman of integrity and dignity, respect and responsibility, who lived a full life, who has finished this earth and is now at rest. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. God of all mercies and comfort, in tender love and compassion embrace your sorrowing servants. Be their refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. Show them again the love of Christ that passes all human understandings, for by death Christ has conquered death, and by rising Christ has opened to all of us the gates of everlasting life. Thanks be to you, O God. Amen. O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, I walk throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Kids, let's make a circle so they raise their.
I don't know if you want to say a prayer or you want
Just a comment. The essence of releasing the doves means what you'd like it to mean. It's the release of, and then each one of them will say a word or two as they release their dove. Okay, Rita, you want to begin? Rita releases this dove of peace and love, of learning, peace and learning. Mama Spirit. Oh, beautiful. So, release the dove of hope.
The one of knowledge.
The one of knowledge. The spirit of knowledge. Learning.
going to college as well. Grandmother.
So they got it. Yeah. Not just walk around laying on the tree behind them. You know.
That's his dad, yeah. Oh, wonderful, yeah. Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, he's a nice man.
Well, that's great.
That's probably what she's doing. You're still with chamber singers. I wish I could be, but I can't.
What you did tomorrow is when we decided we were going to play, I still love you. And the kids. So played hard to get I don't know what game. We were held at Hampshire at the auditorium, at the performance hall. Whenever we got shine and light ranges, I mean, it was just when we saw we walked in, when we were walking in the lobby and Michael was there shaking. So we found that railroad for that railroad. So she wanted to get some cash. We stopped in Cheyenne. It was an hour schedule. Before she wanted to find a bank to cash a check. We asked the conductor when we stepped off, "Is the train going to be here in an hour?" And he said, "Absolutely." So she went to a bank. She cashed a check, like $50. We went to a little restaurant. Yeah, 68. Yeah. We went to a little diner.
No, strike with it.
What's that? Two
Well.
colors each direction.
Yeah.
Can I hold it up, darling? Sarah.
There's two red mice to take your pick. Which one you want to go?
He was downstairs. Randy? Hey, Ellen, go tell your dad to come on upstairs. Ellen. Randy, Justice.
Boo!
She's in here. She's probably way over there. Chair over there.
I'm gonna tape record right through her. She's got a lot of fur.
She sure does.
I'm tape recording her.
Ellen, did you show Mackenzie my dress?
It says Rita LaRue Copeland.
Mm-hmm. My mom made it when I was, let's see, about your age. And then on the back side,
That's a nice.
it says my address when I was that age. Except I wasn't 8. I know I probably was only about 6. And it has my address, 1820 Rainbow Drive. And this was my phone number, which is, that's all it was. 287W.
W stand for.
You know, I don't have a clue, except that was the phone number. That's just what it was. Exactly.
But you would like to give it to other people, sorry, but then you think you could get a copy. You really can't get a copy of a dress, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
And
And then I showed Ellen this morning. This was my bathrobe.
and she put it on. I saw.
Yeah.
She put
Would
it
anybody?
on.
Yeah. Would you like to try it?
I want to try it on.
Just.
I was
Take one behind you and go, okay, you're next.
station sold, and they took me out of the news department, sales manager, and Dennis, it was then when he wasn't working for me that he decided to go ahead and down south. So, and it was a good move for him. Yeah, oh yeah. That was really good.
Back here and look in the mirror.